focus isn't just on the future, it's also on the applications that are already in use today. And so I want to get more on that now, bring in our guest this morning. This is Jack Hidary. He's the CEO of SandboxAQ at AQ, because there's AI and then there's also quantum in the title, and it really speaks to how these two technologies are being used together. So Jack, thanks so much for joining us. We'll get to SandboxAQ in just a moment, but first I do want to get your reaction to not only what Jensen Huang said, but also to this now inclusion of quantum in the upcoming conference.
Annabelle, great to see you. Great to be here live on air with you today. It's a very exciting time, both for AI and quantum. First, I should say that when we look at AI, there's really two kinds of AI that are now emerging. And NVIDIA will be speaking about this, I think, in their upcoming conference. There's the language AI, which we all know about, ChatGPTs, Google Gemini, all the wonderful language AIs out there, LLMs as they're called, large language models. But there's also quantitative AI. And quantitative AI, large quantitative models, incorporate quantum equations into the AI. And that's running today on NVIDIA GPUs and on other specialized chips. So that's happening right now. Even before quantum computers arrive, we're doing molecular modeling. The industry is doing molecular modeling on NVIDIA. NVIDIA is very, very focused on this, on scientific and quantitative AI. This is an emerging area that will get big play, we believe, in 25 and 26. On your question about quantum stocks and quantum computing, it's certainly scaling well. The Willow announcement from Google was a major milestone, demonstrating that error correction can work. That was just a few months ago and obviously sent a lot of the stocks up. There were some moderating comments by others, but net, if you have a mid to long-term view, you're going to want to have exposure to quantum because of its massive impact on computing and on life sciences, on chemicals, on financial services, on most of the major sectors in the economy today.
Yeah, it really promises a lot of different breakthroughs. But SandboxAQ, the focus is on sensing technology in particular. So there's a lot of different use cases of that, but how are you applying it and how are you integrating AI as well?
Annabelle, there's so many applications now of quantitative AI, these LQMs, that we just talked about. First off, look at biopharma. Just came from the JP Morgan conference, the big healthcare life sciences conference that they hold every year in San Francisco, and presented there. And what you're seeing happening is that we can change the curve. Right now, before AI, it takes about 5 to 10 years to get a drug ready for phase 1 trial. Then it goes to 5 to 7 years of trials, and most of those fail. We can now bend that curve with quantitative AI. Language models, Annabelle, not really fit for purpose for developing a new medicine for cancer, for Alzheimer's, for others. But AI that's trained on chemistry, AI that's trained on biology and pharmacology, this is the LQMs, not LLMs, but LQMs that really are impacting things right now.
Yeah, that's it. Some people might say that we've sort of over-indexed maybe a little bit on LLMs so far, but LQMs, to your point, just talk us through again more details. I mean, they're quite difficult to train these models. How do you go about doing it?
It's a fundamental question you're asking. So in the case of large language models, we know how they're trained. People hoover in the entire internet. You need a lot of words to train these language models like ChatGPT, like Gemini, and others. In the case of large quantitative models, we do not take anything from the internet. No data coming from the general public out there. Instead, we're using equations. The equations that have been given to us by the greats, Schrodinger and many others, that tell us how electrons and atoms interact with other electrons and atoms. So if you have a drug candidate and you want to see if it's going to bind to that receptor, that target in the body, we can train on a data set developed by the equations themselves. So this is very pristine data. Unlike the language data that's very fuzzy, you get a lot of hallucinations. We don't see that in the quantitative world. We're getting pristine data out of the equations. We're building data sets. This is a big difference, Annabelle, in the LQM side. We have gen data. We generate the data. This is new synthetic data coming out of the pristine equations, training the neural networks, and then coming out with a handful of solutions that then, of course, are validated and tested in the laboratory and then ultimately in trials. This has now been cutting down by 6-7 years the time it takes to get a particular compound to clinic. It's cutting hundreds of millions of dollars off the cost of developing drugs. Ultimately, this leads to lower cost drugs for more people.
Obviously, as well, that there's a huge amount of interest in this from investors, and you just closed your latest fundraising round at a valuation of $5.6 billion. How are you planning to use these latest funds, and what's your company outlook for this year?
Well, great question. We raised over $300 million in this particular round. That brings a total of $800 million that we've raised for SandboxAQ since our spin out. And we're focused on a number of key areas. First is product development. First use of proceeds is how do we continue to develop our products? This is enterprise software that sits on the cloud, sits on all the major hyperscalers out there. We're utilizing NVIDIA GPUs and making this happen, making this possible. We're going to invest in that product development. I mentioned life sciences already, but that's not the only area that we're involved in. We're also involved in battery chemistry, in catalysts. Catalysts are the lifeblood of industry all over the world. And so be it biology, be it chemistry, be it financial services, we're investing in these enterprise solutions that sit on the cloud, that serve these customers with large quantitative models that complement the language models that there. One way to think about this, Annabelle, is that language models like ChatGPT save you money, they cut your costs, whereas quantitative models are value creation. If you're a drug company, if you're a chemicals company, if you're a car company, if you're a space company, you want to create a lot of value. And that's the product development that quantitative models can give you. The second use of proceeds, of course, is go to market. We've been around the world talking about our different products, just coming back from Europe, now going back to Europe to the Davos World Economic Forum, where we'll be presenting there. So many companies, so many governments there we'll be engaging with. And so this is a global phenomenon, the rise of quantitative AI and A&Q.
There's no specific country leader at this point in time. We see a lot of different companies and different countries, of course, that are investing heavily in this. But I want to get your response as well to what we've seen this week, and that's further restrictions on China's access to cutting-edge AI chips from the US. There are some who would say that China is maybe at least matching the US, maybe it's beaten in quantum sensing technology. What do you make of these restrictions, and how would you look at China's progress in this area as well?
Well, there's no doubt, because the prize is so big, the prize of AI, first with language AI, and now with quantitative AI, and then ultimately also adding quantum into the picture, many countries are going after this. There's going to be a number of key summits on AI coming up in UK and Europe very soon. UK on Feb 7, and in France for many different European countries coming together in Paris for the big AI summit, Feb 10, Feb 11. These would be key summits that global leaders will be coming to. I believe there's more than 80 heads of state coming to the Paris AI conference. So it has caught the world's attention. It's caught the C-suite's attention. And of course, China and other countries are going after it as well. Intense focus of the engineers, of the universities in these areas. And of course, they're looking for the chips to make this all happen, the compute to make this all happen. NVIDIA, certainly the global and dominant leader. China, for its part, having been cut off from that stream, is now developing some local abilities to develop chips on their own. And so there's going to be a very interesting arms race that we'll witness over the next 5 to 7 years as the U.S. and its allies and China begins to focus on its local development of chips. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
All right, Jack, safe travels to Davos. I'm sure you're going to be having a lot of interesting conversations next week. That was Jack Hidary there, CEO of SandboxAQ, and we'll have plenty more ahead. This is Bloomberg.